Luke, thanks for being here today, mate. We're at Richmond Park in the Richmond Park Golf Club because we were trying to film outside. And what happened? Typical English weather.
It rained.
It didn't just rain; it came pouring down just as we started filming, which is classic, really. So we've had to come into the golf club here and record the interview, but it's all good. It's all fine. Thanks for being here. Obviously, I know you fairly well. I've interviewed you before. You've done some incredible things in your life at ultra endurance races, triathlons. The one that comes to mind that is really impressive is the ultimate triathlon, which of course you organised yourself and participated in. What drove you to doing such a thing? Because the organisation on that, I mean, it's Morocco to Monaco, 200, how many?
2,000 kilometres.
2,000 kilometres, and you've done it all yourself and you completed it by yourself. What drove you to that point?
It's quite funny that you asked me that, because a lot of people may think it was something to do with the end product, or actually something to do with swimming, cycling or running or triathlon. But where I was at in life when I actually came up with it, when I literally stared at a world map and was looking for adventure, it was because I was struggling with a lack of identity. I had quite literally just retired from playing football, and I didn't want to face up to the facts of life that what do I do now? I had no idea. I was lost, I was confused, and I just thought I need to do something. And I knew the rest of the world, i.e. my family and friends and everyone else, would ask me, now what? You've retired from football, what are you going to do next? I'm 28, I've got the rest of my life in front of me, so what are you going to do? But because I felt like I had lost my identity when I retired from football, I had no clue, no idea what I was going to do. So I literally came up with this crazy idea that I'm going to be an endurance adventurer, that I'm going to travel the world, do these massive big challenges and make documentaries and write magazine articles and write books. And that's how I'm going to live the rest of my life. Now, in order to do that, I felt like I needed to do something big. I needed to do something that would put me on the map, where people would go, wow, this guy is serious. And something that was worthy of making a documentary, something that was worthy of writing a book about. So then I literally looked at this world map with nothing but adventure on my mind and just went, world, give me something. And to sum up, to answer your question, it was because I didn't have an identity and I didn't want to face up to the fact that I was battling with depression and I had no idea what I was going to do with the rest of my life. So I literally just scared myself into doing something ridiculously crazy that I knew no one else would question, because I knew I'd need to prepare for it. And I just thought, I'm going to make something up and go after that.
Was it almost a distraction at that point from what was troubling you at the time, losing, not having an identity, having to give up a career that you worked so hard for? Because ultra endurance, a lot of people would maybe run a marathon or run a half marathon. You've gone to the extreme, and did you even know anything about ultra running at the time? Most probably not.
Nothing. I had never done a 10K, a half marathon or a marathon before when I signed up to my first ever running race, which was the Marathon des Sables, running 6 marathons.
That's a tough race to start with.
Yeah,
through
exactly.
the Sahara Desert.
Exactly.
Not many people get through that.
No, so I signed up to that and I had 6 months to prepare for that. But this was 3.5 years before the ultimate triathlon. So to give a bit of context, it was not just like I said, I'm going to do the ultimate triathlon, I've never done endurance sports before, and I'm going to do it next year. I gave myself like 3.5 years to prepare, and the Marathon des Sables was the first step. But yeah, it was a sidetrack from life. I just didn't want to face up to the facts of I had to live life now, not as a footballer. So I distracted myself, I distracted the world that I was involved with, other people, to say that I'm going to do this desert race and I'm going to be this adventurer, so no one would actually question my sanity or question the mindset that I was in, because it's like, okay, he's going to go and do this, and after he finishes this, then he'll get a real job, or then he'll face up to the facts of what's going on. And I wasn't speaking about my battle with depression at the time, so no one knew about that. But for me internally, and what was going on as an internal dialogue in my head was, it was almost like a way that I could escape from everyday life to go and do these ultra endurance challenges.
And just before we get into the challenges and the mental side of things, let's roll back a little bit to when you were younger and you were trying to achieve your dream of being a professional footballer, which came true. It happened.
It did.
And you travelled the world. You were very successful at it. Talk us through the moment where you had to decide you had to give it up and go on to something new.
So I grew up in Australia and I played over there and I played in America and I played in the UK and in Belgium, and I did achieve my boyhood dream. So all I ever wanted to do since I was 4 or 5 and as long as I can remember. Which
it was in the Australian A-League, wasn't it?
No, it was before the A-League started.
Okay.
It shows my age a little bit. But so I eventually came over to the UK for football. I was living in Belgium, played over there in the lower leagues. And I came over here, and it was during sort of the summer when I was doing my own training that I started to get injuries, and I battled injuries on and off for about 3 years, getting short-term deals, but nothing like a long contract. So I was truly like trying to just find my way onto any club, and all these injuries kept popping up, and I would get fit, and I'd go to a club, and then I'd break down. It was this whole process. And after 3 years, and probably about 18 months of family, friends, and everyone else saying, look, your body's trying to tell you something, I was able to sort of make peace with the fact that it was time to move on. You know, it took 3 years of basically banging my head up against the wall before I realised that. But the reason I took so long, in hindsight now, was that I knew that I was going to live the rest of my life knowing when I retired and if it was the right time. And I have no regrets. And that's the one thing that I always wanted to know, that I would have no regrets. And pushing those last 18 months of consistently being injured, battling with my mental health alone, and doing everything that I needed to do in terms of rehab to get fit again, that has enabled me to have absolutely no regrets now from that period of time.
And talk us through that moment where you decided to retire, and in between when you did the Marathon des Sables, and you were really struggling with depression and mental health issues there. Talk us through how you managed to get through that dark period of your life.
I barely made it through, but I remember it very clearly. I was training by myself and I tore a calf muscle. Nothing major. You know, I've done it before, and as I felt literally the muscle fibers lengthen and it tear, and it was like this massive weight off my shoulders and this sense of calm that's like, this is it. I'm happy, I'm content, it's over. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not fighting. You know, I put my hands up, I surrender, and I'm good. And I was walking home to my house from where I was training, or hobbling, and I laid down and I iced my calf. I had my leg up on a chair. I'm laying back. I text my girlfriend, I'm injured again. I'm retired. I'm done. It's all good. Text my physio, a very good friend who'd been treating me for years. Same sort of thing. I tore my calf. I'm done. I'm finished. I'm retired. That's it. And it was almost for a second, like I was in this really good place and positive place. And then I sat down, I laid down and thinking, now what? I'm not a footballer anymore. What am I going to do? And how am I going to live the rest of my life? And I sort of went into this, I can't deal with this right now. So I started looking online for just stuff, just searching Google. And then I had this idea in my head that I remember talking to my friend in Australia about this big race through the desert. So I started Googling Sahara running race and things like that, and Marathon des Sables popped up. And I called them up. They said they had a place. It was in 6 months, paid my deposit, and that was it. So I had 6 months to prepare for the race. And what some people know, but not everyone, is I actually signed up to the Marathon des Sables the same day that I retired from football.
Wow.
Now this goes back to me in that instance feeling like I lost my identity. But also it gave me a purpose. And when I was battling with my mental health, when the days were really bad, and I had some pretty dark days in this period, you know, suicidal thoughts. You know, there was a couple of times where I went and stood on tops of bridges thinking about, is it really worth it? Self-harming thoughts as well. It was this sense of purpose that I've signed up to this race and I want to do everything I can to achieve it. That sort of kept me going, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And when you had those thoughts, like so many people do these days, so many young men in particular who have suicidal thoughts and commit suicide, who did you have in your life that you could confide in to help you in that period? I mean, when you came to running the Marathon des Sables, that was a challenge you set yourself. But during that time, it's hard to be by yourself, and that's why so many people struggle. They don't have anyone they can talk to. Who did you have to talk to in that period?
Yeah, look, I chose to, and I say this consciously now, I chose to suffer in silence because I felt ashamed, I felt small, I felt weak, you know, all these things that we hear consistently in these days. I felt them. Even though I was this, at the time, ex-professional footballer, and I'm going to do what's deemed as the world's toughest foot race, but I still felt all these things. So it was very difficult for me to reach out, even though I'm very close with my family, even though they're on the other side of the world, and even my girlfriend at the time. I didn't share what I was going through. But I had one friend, his nickname Sheila, which is a whole nother story.
Well, if you're Australian, Sheila's a good nickname.
Exactly. So we didn't talk about my mental health. He knew I was going through a tough time, but we would just talk about anything. And I would try and spend as much time with him as I could. And we became very close, even closer than we already were. But I felt like I had someone there. But at the same time, during that period when I was preparing for the Marathon des Sables, I was just doing it all alone. And it's something that I wish I hadn't. I wish I did open up, but that's where I was at in my own journey, because I felt so small and weak and helpless and like I wasn't capable of doing anything, even though I had this big challenge coming up ahead of me. I was just really lost and felt really ashamed of how I was feeling.
It's almost as if, because you're a man, sometimes you can't talk about that, or you feel a little bit ashamed to talk about that with friends, because for whatever reason you don't want to put them in the position, in that awkward position, or you feel like you don't want to show that side of you because it almost is like a weakness. And that's obviously the big problem with so many people in society these days. What bit of advice would you give a young person who might be dealing with, you know, tough times, mental struggles like you did?
I didn't want to burden other people either and put my problems on their plate, so to speak. Yeah. But when I actually started to talk to my family, my parents, my sister, some close friends, I was, and this may sound shocking to people, but I was actually shocked at how open and how supportive they were. I was half expecting that they may not understand, and also that, not that they would judge me, but they would try and sort of just, oh, okay, it's all right, just move on. But everyone was so open, even though they may not have totally understood what I was going through, they would just said, we're here. We're here when you need it. We're here to talk, to listen, to be with you, however you need that to be. And the level of support that I got from close family and friends was amazing. And now there isn't, that I know of, a history of mental health illness in my family. So it's not like my parents, they're not counsellors or they don't have any sort of counselling background. It's not like that's something that they knew how to handle. Not at all. But because they loved me and they cared for me, they made me feel so supported. And I think anyone that's struggling with their mental health, it's confide in the people that love you and that you love, and you will be overwhelmed with the amount of support and understanding they actually have for you, and they will do what they can to help you.
So almost to take that leap of faith and reach out, and it will work out. in the end.
Yeah.
Better than you could imagine, really.
Yeah, exactly.
So you did the Marathon des Sables, which was absolutely incredible achievement through the Sahara Desert. It doesn't get much tougher. That started off the bug, the addiction almost for ultra endurance. You then went on to do a double Ironman triathlon, which is crazy. I'd never even heard of that before. Isn't it in Wales, in Snowdonia?
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's not flat.
Tough conditions, very, very much like fell running culture. Double Ironman distance, hundreds of miles, cycling, swimming and running. And then that brought you onto the Ultimate Triathlon. And I know you suffered a lot during the Ultimate Triathlon. It was such a tough thing to accomplish. And with your past, with your injuries, what happened to you? You got a really bad injury in the Ultimate Triathlon. What made you push through and to complete that? Because you must have been thinking, I can't believe this is happening again. You know, I've been waiting so long to do this, and now I've picked up this injury. Can I make it through?
Your leg slightly.
Well, you lift it. I can't move it. Ah!
Okay. So just put that back down to the line. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it was an interesting journey going through all those challenges that you touched on. And you said it right, it was an addiction. And many sports people will retire from professional sports. And unfortunately, some will go into drug and alcohol addiction, gambling and things like that. I was no different. My drug of choice was ultra endurance sports. Now on the surface, that may seem a lot healthier than maybe drugs or alcohol or gambling, but it wasn't, because every time I completed a challenge, which was like my hit, so to speak, I needed to find something bigger, stronger, faster and harder. And the whole time, I wasn't actually working on my mental health. I wasn't actually working on myself as a person. I was pushing it to the side. And then going, what's next? What's next? I've got to prepare, I've got to try and raise some money and make some money so I can go and do this double Ironman, you know, so I can prepare, so I can train for it. So it was not healthy. And the lead up to the Ultimate Triathlon in 2015 was really the beginning of the end. I was training 25 to 30 hours a week of swimming, cycling, running, gym work, yoga, stretching, all this type of stuff. But then also speaking about my big challenges at different shows and different places, different businesses. I was training other runners as well, writing magazine articles for a few magazines to make money and all the rest of that. So combining both of those, sleep went. So I became an insomniac, for lack of a better term. Sometimes I would sleep 5 or 6 hours a week, which your body doesn't recover. And this is going on over 2015. And I'm not really speaking too much about my battle with depression at the time. And I just kept thinking, I need to organise the Ultimate Triathlon. I need to get the filmmaker sorted. I need to get funding. I need to promote it. I need to make sure that I can come back and write magazine articles to help promote afterwards. I need to make sure I know the routes and do all of this. So then when I actually went out to start the Ultimate Triathlon, I wasn't on empty. I was running on fumes. Now, when you prepare for big ultra endurance challenges, you're never going to be, your fuel tank's never going to be 100%, because you can't do that amount of training and then have a little bit of rest and let it full up.
You just don't have the time, do you?
No, you don't. It doesn't work like that. But if you can be 70, 80%, 90% full, then that's a success. I was on fumes because 2015 pushed me to the limits. So then when I actually started it, and I do a 25-kilometre swim, and I do back-to-back 18-kilometre days on the bike, my body is being drained, my nervous system is being blown up, and then all of a sudden, I start to break down. Now, when I tore my quadricep, and at this stage I was running, and I was hobbling to a walk, and I had around 450 kilometres to get to Monaco, to fulfill this dream that I was pushing myself for 3.5 years to do.
And in Morocco, where you started, tough conditions, very hot.
Yeah, for the swim, that's where I finished. And I realised if I don't finish this, all that stuff in the past was for what? Okay, so one of the things that was driving me forward was fear of failure. I didn't want to fail. I didn't want to let people down, the crew I had there. I didn't want to let myself down. And also, from an ego standpoint, I didn't want to look like that I had failed this big challenge that everyone said I wouldn't achieve. But on the main reason what pushed me forward was this was my big hit. This was my next big addiction, the ultimate triathlon. And I wasn't gonna let a little quadricep tear stop me. So when I couldn't run anymore, when I couldn't walk, and I still had over 400 kilometers, I did the only thing I felt possible. Get back on the bike and cycle with one leg to get to Monaco, because there was no way in hell that I was gonna stop there and not get to Monaco.
Just to think of someone riding with what the power of one leg through those conditions and that distance is incredible, absolutely incredible. But like you said, you can't let one injury stop you from completing it. And at that point, you were over halfway.
Oh, I was right near the finish.
Right near the end.
Like that's the way I looked at it. But as I said, like what was driving me was the fear of failure. So when you know, or when you feel you have something behind you chasing you, which is the feeling I got, I was running away from that.
Yeah.
So every day I woke up and I felt horrible. And then when my quadricep started to tear and getting worse and getting worse and getting worse, it was almost like, well, if I stop and I look over my shoulder, I can see my past. I can see the demons I'm running away from, because I hadn't actually done any self-work. I'd only just started to see a therapist a couple of months before I went out to do the ultimate triathlon. So my self-work to overcome this mentally and work with some tools to help me be more of a personal development side of things had only just begun. And there's still all these demons and all this path that I was running away from. So that's what really kept pushing me forward.
That's why I pay these guys absolutely nothing to crew for me, because they are the best in the world. We're going to celebrate on some fizzy water tonight. Get to bed as soon as we can, because tomorrow this bad boy comes out. One foot in front of the other. Time to get to Monaco. Cheers, guys. Awesome.
Cheers.
Chin chin.
So you obviously completed the ultimate triathlon, and you must have felt such relief and passion for completing something that you put so much work into. But the 2 years that followed that, the depression that you said was always there, you were running away from it, it's always in the background, it crept back, and you suffered a little bit from that in those 2 years. There was no more distractions, nothing to look forward to in terms of challenges and races. What did that period of your life teach you, and how did you cope after suffering from it before?
It was one of the most difficult times of my life, but also one of the most rewarding. And I say that because my health plummeted badly. As I said, I started the ultimate triathlon on fumes. So then when I did those 12 days and I covered the 2,000 kilometers, my endocrine system, so all my hormones, were completely depleted. Some of my hormones weren't secreting at all. My soft tissue was like a mess. I had so many little injuries, plus a big one on my quadricep. I needed time to heal that. And my nervous system was shot as well. So I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't recovering. I felt exhausted all the time. And I couldn't recall, my memory recall was really bad. And also my word recall. So, you know, you might say, what's that thing that you hold and you put to your ear and you speak to someone? And someone says, oh, a phone. Yeah, I couldn't remember things like that, like really basic things. And then obviously my mental health started to creep back, and like a wave of emotion kept coming over me. So with context, I actually didn't do any exercise for nearly 2 years post the ultimate triathlon because I couldn't. So I saw different specialists and I was having different treatment to naturally to rejuvenate my body. So when someone who's been an athlete his entire life, you know, I was training full time as a footballer when I was 14, 15, and you know, at 33, I had to stop. You know, I couldn't do anything. So you have to spend a lot of time with yourself. So as I said, it was a very difficult time, but it was very rewarding because I had to actually stop and go, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep running away. And I realized the ultimate triathlon was my overdose, to use that drug addiction analogy. It was my overdose. So I had to take myself to sort of rehab and look at myself in the mirror, both figuratively and literally, and ask myself, how do I want to live the rest of my life? Do I want to keep running away, or do I want to face up to what I'm running away from, learn from it, that can enable me to actually start moving forward? And the biggest thing I learned from that period was that it's okay to be vulnerable. You know, it's okay to open up about how you're feeling and talk about your emotions. And that's when I really started to talk a lot about my mental health. On social media, I started doing work with different charities, filming different things on Mental Health Awareness Day and just for different campaigns. And just started to, you know, people would say, why did you retire from football? And I'd say, oh, because of injuries, and I had a really dark battle with depression. Whereas before, I just said injuries. And I would just start a conversation with it. So that was one of the biggest things. It's okay to be vulnerable. Whether you're male, female, young or old, or whoever you are, that it's okay. And that was very powerful for me.
I think that's the main issue with so many people, is that it's all trapped inside them, isn't it? And for you to, I know you spoke with your family before, a few years prior, and they helped a little bit and they were there for you, but to confront it face on and say, right, I'm going to open up, I'm going to put it on social media, I'm going to answer any questions that anyone has, I'm going to tell everybody everything about the way I've suffered, and to, you know, have nothing to hide in a way and say, this is me, you either accept it or you don't, and I'm not afraid to talk about anything. And that a lot of people respect that, but it also gives you that real sense of relief that finally it's out there, I'm confronting my fears, I'm not holding anything back, and I'm free almost, in a way.
It's the first step.
Yeah.
It's not like you start talking about this and, oh, the world's a rosy place, you know, or your world's a rosy place. It's the first step.
But it's your biggest fear, isn't it? You've conquered you're talking to everyone about what you suffered with, and you're not afraid of anyone judging you or having an impression of you in a certain way. You're like, this is me, and I'm very happy to conquer that fear and talk about something that so many people don't.
Yeah, because I became comfortable with what I was going through, you know, and took that first step. But don't get me wrong, there were people that, I don't want to say pushed back, but questioned. Because they're like, you're one of the happiest people I know. How can you have depression? Or the other side was, how can you battle with depression and go through all of this when you're off doing these big challenges? Because the way that society sees it is, unfortunately, people who have depression or mental health illnesses are weak and they're not strong and they're holed up in a room by themselves and not talking to anyone. You know, they lock themselves away from the world. Here I am doing 2,000 kilometre triathlons and 100-mile running races and running through the Sahara Desert. You know, the epitome of strong and robust and someone who can endure and positive. But on the flip side, it was completely opposite. So people did question it. And that was fine, because it was their opinion. And I would explain to them that, look, I've got to this place to be able to talk about this through learning that it's okay to be vulnerable. This is who I am, and I'm going to work with it. And that I don't need anyone else's authority or you know, like someone else to pat me on the back and go, yeah, I totally understand it. But this is what I'm going through. And if I can help one person that's going through something similar because they see a video or they see a photo or they see something that I say that can help them reach out to someone and make their life better, then me speaking out and navigating my way through the maybe not negative comments, but the comments that aren't as positive as others or supportive, then it's all worth it.
And I suppose you never know what someone's going through. So somebody talking to you and they may seem fine from the outside, you giving them that little bit of advice from your experience would help them a lot more than you could possibly imagine, really. And that comes on to like when you're looking for escapism, and a lot of people do turn to ultra running, ultra endurance sports. What do you think, from your experience, is so addictive about putting your body through such extremes to cope with the mental side of things?
Well, most people who do ultra endurance challenges, they'll say the most addictive thing is being able to eat so much.
Yeah, that's a plus.
Yeah, it is. But for me, it's not so much that. Right now, and where I'm at over the last couple of years, the most addictive thing that I realised for me is realising what I'm capable of. And it's almost like, you know, I feel like everyone is capable of so much more than we believe. And when we push ourselves to the edge of our comfort zone, it's only there where we can catch a glimpse of our true potential. Because we get to where it gets really hard. We think, there's no way I can do this. But that's really only where your potential starts. And I feel like my addiction to ultra endurance challenges is seeing what I'm capable of. You know, like the ultimate triathlon, I had no idea if I could complete 2,000 kilometers in 12 days in the way that I had planned it in 3.5 years' time when I first came up with it. But I wanted to try because I knew I'd learn so much from it. So it's the learning opportunities you get from doing ultra endurance challenges, from pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, that appeals to me. And then using that within my mental health, because it's difficult to talk about it, because there's so much stigma in the world. So talking about it, for myself to a degree still, but for a lot of other people, is the end of your comfort zone. You might be able to share it with your partner, your spouse, your family. But are you going to tell your work colleagues? That might be too far. As soon as you walk in the front door of your work, that's your comfort zone. But I want to try and inspire people into action to be able to get to that level, that threshold, and go, yeah, I want to go that next step and tell my work colleagues. Like when it comes up, not to go and announce it, but at the right time, and to be open to talk about it. So my addiction is to find out what I'm capable of and push past that comfort zone and really go after what my potential is, not just in endurance sports, which is where I've learnt that, but use that in all aspects of my life, and also to use those principles to help others talk about their mental health.
I was listening to someone give a TED talk recently, I forget who it was, but they were saying how everybody's born with talent and amazing ability, but it's almost the society we live in drains it out of you as you grow older, and so many people don't think they can accomplish much. Whereas if you really set your mind to it, you can. And most people, you know, you're just a normal person like anyone else. They can achieve incredible things. And if you set your mind to it, you really, I know it's a bit of a cliche thing to say, to set your mind to something, you can accomplish it, but you really can. And I think that's the problem with society, is that so many people don't think they have a talent or they're not good enough. And they're comparing lives with people who look like they're really happy but probably aren't. And it's great that you're coming out and saying, well, you know, you need to speak about it and open up and say, this is who I am, and you can achieve whatever you want in life if you set your mind to it. But moving on now, you're in a good place. You've put that in the past. You're talking to people now. You give motivational talks about mental health issues. What have you learned from those experiences?
Look, I like to see life as an opportunity to learn and grow, because I have a life philosophy that is to learn daily and teach others what life has taught me. So when I get up every morning, I think about, what can I learn today? Where can I learn it? And who can I learn it from? And then throughout that day as well is, okay, can I teach other people what I've learned throughout life? So you look at my social media accounts, I would say 90% of it is me actually trying to give my followers and my community something to think about. You know, teaching them something, even just a thought to go away. Occasionally there's, you know, like a lovely photo of me on the beach when I go on holidays, but you know, it's very rare. Yeah. But I want to give back to the world that has given me so much. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways for me now, is that I follow this life philosophy wherever I go. And I spoke recently at a charity in the advertising industry about mental health. And I taught them what life has taught me, the principles of the mindset that I have. And it's very important to continually try and learn, because if we're not moving forward, we're moving backwards. I feel like that. Even if we're stationary, we're not progressing. Okay, so it's always important to try and grow. And you do that through learning, through having knowledge. And people often say, well, I can't do this or I can't do that. It's not that people can't do things, it's they're not willing to give up the time and the effort and to understand how to achieve something. And then the other side of that is they fear failure. Okay, for me, as long as you're breathing, failing is positive, because we have this thing called reflection. So if and when we fail, and then we reflect and we gain knowledge from that reflection, we can go back around and use that to that same activity or thing that we're trying to do. So in order to continue to grow in life and learn, this is what I love doing, is we can't be afraid to fail. And we shouldn't be, because if we reflect, we gain that knowledge. And the more knowledge we have, the easier it is for us to grow if we understand that knowledge and we use that in everyday life to try and help us grow. So I've learned that we shouldn't be afraid to fail, and that we should always be trying to learn and grow and become the best version of ourselves every single day, because that's living. That's actually not just surviving in this world, but that's living and progressing as individuals and giving back to the community that is the world. And that's what I love to do every single day. And that's my message when I'm trying to work with other people individually, whether it's mindset coaching or athletic coaching, or speaking to hundreds of people either online or face-to-face in an auditorium when I do a talk on mindset.
And that's so important, isn't it? Because you always see, a lot of people always see the final product. They see a successful person and they think, oh, I'm not like that, I can't do what they've done. And they're almost afraid to fail. But what they don't see is all the failures that have made that person successful. You can't be successful unless you fail. That's the essence of being a success. And it's really important that you're telling people about that and letting them know that don't be afraid to fail. It's part of the journey, and you'll get there in the end. Things will work out, which they will, which they always do.
Exactly, and success isn't a destination. I don't think it's part of the process.
Yeah.
You know, so don't look at success as the end point. You know, it's part of the process, and if you trust the process and you continually work towards it, then you will be able to enjoy it. You know, it's the same with mental health. Don't look at, okay, I battle with depression or anxiety or whatever. Don't look at, I never want to have depression anymore, or I can't wait when I'm never anxious, or I never suffer from anxiety anymore. Look at, I'm going to learn to live with it. And the days that are great and I don't feel anxious or I don't feel depressed, that's a success. Enjoy those days. Learn from those. What headspace were you in when those happened? What was happening around you? How did you feel? You know, who was around you? And then build from that. So you can have more successful days with your mental health, rather than going, I can't wait till the day comes that I don't suffer from mental health illnesses.
All of these experiences have led to you writing your book, which is out now.
Yeah.
Tell us about the message that you wanted to send with the book, and what it's about, what you want people to learn from it.
It's an autobiography at the ripe old age of 35.
You're getting on 35.
Which I still find it hilarious that I felt that I could write something that someone would actually want to read. Now look, the book has its own story, which we can get into another time, but I wrote this book, like most things that I do, I was all in 100%. You know, I think to be truly unique, you have to be all in. I didn't want to write a book about my life and my adventures and my story by not talking about my mental health and not being completely open and honest. And to sum up sort of how open and honest and raw I wrote this book, the way I wrote it was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. Because I talked about specific instances and things that had happened that I hadn't spoken about to anyone apart from my therapist. Not my now wife, not my mum or dad or sister or friends, no one. So when my sister first read the manuscript, she was angry. When my mum first read it, we had like a 5-hour conversation. And it was intense at times. There was plenty of tears. I had a friend that as soon as I would write a couple of pages that was really hard, I would email them to. And I Googled several times, how do you unsend an email? Because I can't believe I'm writing that. But the message that I wanted to put across in the book was that life is a journey and we should live and learn from it. And I wanted to show people that anyone can suffer from mental health illness. But at the same time, anyone can achieve great things, because the book is about a journey battling mental health and battling setbacks in life to achieve great things, to achieve things that maybe you and others don't believe that you could do. And then what I've learned from my journey. You know, I don't finish the book on top of the mountain or literally in Monaco going, I completed the ultimate triathlon, this is awesome. Yeah. Like so many of these sort of sport autobiography books do. I still have 2 more chapters after the ultimate triathlon to tell people about what happened post-event, like we just spoke about, but then also what I've learned from life and some of the principles that I use in everyday life so they can take away and put it into their own lives. So it's not just a book about sport, not just a book about ultra endurance and challenges. It combines that with mental health, a personal journey, and also what I've learned from it as well.
And finally, to wrap up, I think I already know the answer to this, but if you had a time machine and you were to go back to when you were 15, 16 years old, would you do anything differently?
I wouldn't be the man I am today if anything had changed. I wouldn't change a thing, because although I had to endure some tough times, some very tough times, and there were times where I didn't think it was worth hanging around, I don't think I would have came to the place mentally and physically to where I am today if I didn't go through those. The only thing I probably would have done differently is speak about my mental health earlier, because I don't think that would have changed who I am. I think it just would have fast-tracked my ability to live life to the fullest even more when I had a bigger support network around me earlier on in my life. But in reality, no, I am who I am today because of the battles I've got through and I've won, and I'm pretty happy where I'm at.
And that's the main battle, isn't it? Just getting people to talk about it and open up, and that can save so many people's lives.
It really can. Being open and honest and building a support network around yourself.
Yeah. Luke, thanks so much for being here today and opening up. I think it's really important, like I mentioned, to talk about these things and to give your side, because you've gone through it all, and you know what people are feeling like, and you know what your own experiences were and what helped you. And I think a lot of people really appreciate that. So thanks, mate.
No worries, mate.
Really
Absolute
appreciate it.
pleasure.
Next time we'll get outside. We'll go for a run when it's not raining.
Fantastic.
Just quickly, your book. What's it called, so people can?
It's called
check
Chasing Extreme,
Yep.
and you can find it on Amazon. And that's the best place to go to and find it. And please, if you buy it on Amazon, leave a review. I'm waiting for your review as well, Joe.
Yep, I'll be doing it straight after this.
That's the best place, and you can find me at tyburski.com, and you can hear about my stories there.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
All right.
Really appreciate it.
Someone said to me, you know, think about why I'm doing the ultimate triathlon, and maybe it's part of why, but it's definitely what goes through my head, and I actually put it into words, and I like this. I had a dream created with clarity to push my limits so I could see a glimpse of my potential. That sums it up.